I'd like to take some time to discuss the topic circulating around ADD. I can't speak on ADHD. I've never been diagnosed with it. I have been diagnosed with ADD, as many of you already know. Now, what I want to do is put what at least I go through in context for what you might not go through. Give you a little bit of idea of what it's like in my head to deal with a weak attention span. And I intentionally say weak attention span because while I am not a psychologist, I am going to say this outright. I don't have any experience in the field of psychology except for what I've researched. So I am not saying this as a definitive way that ADD works. What I'm saying is this is how I experience it. This is my thoughts on it, and these are my solutions to dealing with it. Sometimes it is very hard for me to focus on things. Sometimes it's very hard for me to recognize that I'm not focusing on something. I have been making a lot of strides in my job, but I also have a lot of improvement left to work on in areas that I'm not super strong in. And sometimes it's frustrating not seeing that progress that I'd like to see and not knowing how to really do that. And so when I'm in those situations where I have to write documentation or I have to create something new to create a process, it's hard to, that's a whole nother can of worms. That's a whole nother topic. But in doing so, it's hard to focus on specifically what I need to do because it's also in areas that I'm weak in or what I feel I'm weak in. Writing documentation and creating processes in a written way rather than just doing it. Creating repeatable processes, storing information clearly and easy for people to find and very useful. In certain areas, I'm sitting there working on this kind of stuff, sending out emails, reading documentation, trying to understand certain other processes that already exist or software or concepts or, learning how to manage a budget. These are things that I'm working on, right? Many things. And I bounce from thing to thing. And it's really easy to use the excuse of multitasking. What I can say about the topic of multitasking is there are a lot of people more credible than me, more successful than me, that have said that multitasking is just not efficient. I would agree after years of both, right? I've experienced what it's like to multitask. I've experienced what it's like to not multitask for a prolonged period of time and focus on one thing. And as an adult now, with everything happening in my personal life and my career, I've lost some discipline in my focus. So I'm recognizing because I'm in this new situation, I'm experiencing something new, trying to learn new skills while also trying to figure out my personal life because everyone's life has changed since this pandemic, myself included. And I'm still trying to figure out many roles like being a father, being a husband or a significant other, right? A partner. Doing all of these while also trying to pursue a full dream job career, it's very challenging sometimes to be present all the time. Many people may be like me where they've never been present for most of what they're doing, right? Part of their mentality is lost in the mental ether, right? They're thinking about other things. They're stressing about other things. They're being mad about other things. They're being concerned or working out problems in their head while having conversations, while working at their job, while being at school. There's a lot of people. I have to imagine there's a lot of people that are like this, where they're thinking while also doing something. But then also you have your phone around you. You have your email up. You have notifications and you have multiple tabs up. All of those things can contribute to a weak attention span, to getting distracted. That's not me saying that. I have experienced that myself. But there's also, again, experts that have clearly stated multitasking and distracting yourself is not helpful in the long run and not really helpful in the short run either. It's not very productive. You could probably get other things done more quickly if you do it by itself. And probably with higher quality too, right? And that's the thing. I think a lot of focus is reliant on intention. And sometimes, for me, my intention is just to do good enough. For some people, that's okay. And I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to the people like me that are dissatisfied with the quality of what they're creating, but are not taking the strides needed to do those things. And focus is incredibly important because you have to be able to tell your brain to focus on something specific without being distracted for more than, 10 minutes, more than 20 minutes, maybe an hour, right? And having that clear intention of what you want to get done and what you don't want to be doing, right? Saying no to anything that's not relevant to what you're doing right now. This 30 minutes, this is for working on this. These 30 minutes are for working out. These 30 minutes are for making sure that I meditate, because that is going to help me have a clearer mind to function better. My brain is going to function better. If I work out, my body's going to function better, right? If I'm staying with my family, or doing things that bring me joy, my emotional, or some would say spiritual sides would be happier, right? Would be healthier, I will say. And I feel like for me, from the people that I've talked to and observed, not everyone struggles with focus as much as I do. So, from the diagnosis when I was 18 of having ADD, 16, I think, having ADD, which is not even why I went to the psychologist in the first place. I just had a bad memory, right? For many of you who don't know, I told my mom, hey, I keep forgetting stuff. Like, I'm sick of school. I just want to graduate. I don't want to get left behind. But there's certain classes I'm just not good at. Like, I just don't know how to retain the information. I keep forgetting things. When the teacher talks, they say a bunch of words, and all of a sudden I'm snapping back to reality after a long talk, and I don't remember anything that teacher has said. My perspective was, I have a bad memory. I'm not remembering the information that's being given to me. Little did I realize, I just was not paying attention to it. I didn't know I wasn't paying attention to it. It's just naturally what my body did. My body would create scenarios in my head. I used to like observing people, create scenarios in my head, or think about video games in my head, and not hear a single word, right? As I recognized that I did that, years later, I realized I wasn't remembering because I wasn't forgetting because of the fact that I have a bad memory. I was forgetting because I was probably thinking about multiple things at once, or not even really paying attention to it. Like, I can look at somebody, shake my head, nod, and have two full conversations in my head at the same time and not hear a single word that you're saying, if I let my brain do that. Unfortunately, the medication that I took didn't help me at the time, so I struggled with it up until my mid-20s. And I only accidentally stumbled upon a solution to my weak attention span, which was meditation and exercise, and minimizing multitasking. Those three things, among eating healthier, my brain had never been more focused. I had never known what it was like to have a quiet mind. It took me until the age of 25, or around that age, to know what a quiet mind sounded like. Many of you may be thinking, a quiet mind, what does that sound like? And to you, I would say I recommend finding something that can be focused on for a long period of time. Something you can do while also observing what your mind is doing. I recommend meditation. It's the simplest form because you're minimizing most of your senses by just sitting still, closing your eyes, or staring with unfocused eyes. You can do open eye meditation for some people whose eyes don't naturally close. You can just unrest your eyes and look somewhere off into the distance, preferably with not a lot of light in your eye, right? Light is fine. Just don't have a light shining directly on your eye and you're trying to ignore it. That's not healthy. You're still going to hurt your eyes. But again, you're minimizing your senses. Your eyes are coming out of focus, so you're not looking at your eyes. If you do see through your eyes, that means that you are putting focus on what you're looking around. And that's not the intention when you're meditating. Now, the intention changes based on the person meditating and the style of meditation they're doing. There are some really simple kinds of meditation, which is why I recommend starting, like mindfulness meditation. And there's some more complex, more in-depth forms of concentration or meditation. And that's not really what I'm talking about. For people who are newer and don't know what it's like to have a quiet mind, you start off simple and work your way up. That way, you don't get too deterred, because meditation is hard. And it's hard because individuals tend to want to not sit still for a long time, either mentally or physically. And if you have ADD or ADHD, it's like cranked to 11. It's incredibly hard. But as I revisit concentration, intentional concentration, I am recognizing the biggest challenge is willing myself to want to do it, to clearly state these so many minutes are for this and this alone. You're going to sit here and clearly and thoroughly do these things for this period of time, and nothing else matters. Nothing. No phone, no emails, no Discord, no extra tabs unless it's music related. Nothing. And you do this thing until that timer is done, or you feel like you need to continue on. But then when it's time to do the next thing, you're doing the next thing, and you're not stuck on this. You're letting this go because your time is done, and you're moving on to this. If you need to revisit that, you can schedule that for another block intentionally, unless it's incredibly urgent, unless you need to have it right now because someone else is waiting on it. You are doing this. Telling yourself that's the most important step that I have been leaving out a lot of times. I have a long list, but I haven't been setting clear barriers of when to work on some of these things. It makes it harder to focus for me if I'm not doing that specifically. I'm not being very intentional with my time, but just, I feel like the pandemic, I definitely went through a depression. I talked about this a long time ago, which as a check-in has gotten a lot better. I have taken medication. The medication's been working great, and that's part of why I'm now talking about this. I've been able to clear some mind fog and really see more clearly and think more clearly and be more motivated and have more energy and be able to work out, even if I keep getting injured when I work out. Whew. But long story short, if you're like me and you're getting frustrated sometimes because you're not working to the quality that you want to work, if your attention span is getting in your way in some form or fashion, whether it be if you're a competitor, stressing out about what if or what you did or what other people might think of you, or just getting frustrated or being disrespected by someone's playstyle. They're demoing you too much and now you hate them. They're getting lucky pinches and now you're mad. Those things aren't important to you. What's important is, where do I need to put the ball? Where do I need to be? Where are my teammates? Where are the opponents? Where are they going to send it? Those are important information, right? Why are my mechanics not where they need to be? What can I change about that? That is a useful thought, but dwell on it for too long, it becomes a distraction, right? So having to identify what is relevant and then sticking to that as promised, that's what needs to be done to compete at a high level consistently. Or if you're like me, and again, these are my solutions. So again, this isn't going to work for everybody. I'm not saying everybody needs to do this. Not everyone thinks the same. So I want to make sure that's very clarified, because I think this is an important topic for some people, but it may not be useful for some of you. But that can create discourse and conversation. That's the good part about it. Anyway, if you're like me and you're working on things out of your comfort zone, make sure you're setting clear time for those things. Make sure you're being very intentional. Like, these are the things that I want to get done during these times. Nothing else matters. Even if you don't schedule that, some people can just do that internally and be very focused. But if you're like me, again, you got to have a calendar or something to keep track of. Hey, these are the times. I set an actual timer, and the timer goes off, and I know, okay, time is done. Making sure that I take breaks where I do literally nothing and just kind of think or clear my head, meditate. Something like that. Has to be very intentional. Nothing else. Put the phone away unless you're turning on timer. Do not disturb mode. I will take time to meditate. I do take time to meditate. I encourage those things. There are people who struggle or are held back by their focus, and it can feel like sabotage. And in a way, it is. It feels like self-sabotage. And that can be incredibly frustrating. So I want to open up this dialogue. I've talked about focus a lot, and I'll continue to talk about it. As I make new discoveries, as I find new interest in the topic, or as I have new guests that I want to talk about the focus, about that topic. But I also want to know what the listeners think. I want to hear from you. Is focus a challenge for you? Or is it something you can just will on command? And even if you're depressed or sad, your emotions don't really affect your level of focus. Or maybe you've never really known what it's like to think about only one thing for a prolonged period of time. What are your solutions, or how has it affected you? How do you feel about it? Those are things that I would like to know. So thank you guys so much for listening. I know this is kind of a random, shorter episode, but it felt like something that I wanted to talk about separately from the normal format. And just have that conversation out there and get some thoughts from you. So let me know. Of course, follow me on the social media. I'll have links in the description. Make sure you guys check out the show notes. They will be in there. As always, have a good one.